Hello. This is the first in a series of videos I'm going to call Lessons Learned. It's a chance for me to share what I've learned about TTRPGs and maybe share some lessons I think other people should learn. I've been playing TTRPGs since I was very young, and I have been playing them consistently ever since, pretty much my entire life. And that means I have learned a lot of lessons the hard way. And I know that is not the best way to learn. And I don't want these to just be whatever I want to talk about. I get a lot of questions, tons of questions on this channel, and I really like answering them. I'm just not great at always tracking them down. So this is sort of a way to funnel in a lot of those questions into one series. So whatever I see commented on or asked about, or suggestions for topics people want to explore, whether it's something really specific about their game that they want to ask about, or just something in general, or a technique, a tutorial, or an obstacle they've run into that they want to know how I deal with it. This is the space for all of that. I love talking about and teaching TTRPGs almost as much as I love playing them, so please ask me questions, give me stuff so I can sustain myself with this all-consuming hobby of mine. My intention is for these to be a little more casual than some of the other videos I have. The tutorials and things like that I do take a lot of preparation, and I hate editing, and I'm really bad at it, and I'm very, very slow at it. So what you see, the amount of hours it takes to make it does not match the quality of it at all. You don't understand how much I suffer for these, but I do it anyway. So this is a way where I could stay motivated by doing a more low effort, but still getting into the things I want to get into, and more importantly, the things you want to get into. And hopefully these are videos I can kind of sneak in during my busier times, which happen to be all of the time. This is also born out of the fact that I hate every social media site I've had to join as part of this TTRPG content thing that we're doing. But YouTube's not bad. Surprisingly, you always hear that like YouTube comments are the worst, whether I've just been lucky or no, I'm never lucky. So yeah, it's not as bad as people say. I enjoy the comments I get in here and a lot of the conversations and questions that happen. So I kind of want to lean into that a little bit more. But also, I am aware that some people are very damn annoying. Luckily, mostly elsewhere, most of you are pretty cool. So I feel pretty good that I don't have to, I have not attracted the dredges of this particular space. But I see them. I see them in other creator spaces, and I weep for them. I'm sorry, but also you can keep them. This will deal with that a little bit, but mostly I wanted to talk about today the edition wars, which aren't a real thing, but mostly the question and the topic of which edition of a particular World of Darkness game should you play. I also realize the fandom for World of Darkness can feel very different depending on which corner of the internet you find yourself on, which is true for pretty much any geek-centered media. The root of the problem is not World of Darkness. It's outrage, obsession, and just the egocentric portions of the geek culture. But that's a whole like essay thing that I'm sure others have done a better job of dealing with. So not for me. We're talking about World of Darkness editions. Now I could do a whole video explaining the differences in the editions and tracing the timeline of the different publications and whatnot, but that's just not really that interesting to me and not the point of this. I play 5th edition. This channel is going to be 5th edition content. So if you're not interested in 5th edition content, don't really, I got nothing for you. Sorry. And so it just won't be that relevant to like really dive into the other editions. But I've played all of them, so I could talk about it a little bit for those of you who are new players, mostly wondering, who might have run into a thing here or there about, oh, you should play this one or this one. This is more for you. Now, there's the old or classic World of Darkness. You might have seen mention of a New World of Darkness, which became Chronicles of Darkness, and then, of course, the current 5th edition World of Darkness. And if you're wondering what edition of a game you should play, out of the ones out currently in 5th edition, which is Vampire, Werewolf, and Hunter, the conversation is probably, at least between Vampire and Werewolf, if you should play 20th or play 5th. With Hunter, just play 5th edition Hunter, honestly. Or Vigil, which is a little more similar to that. And Chronicles of Darkness that's now just a separate thing. It's for legal purposes. Onyx Path Publishing does those. They're still making those games. That's still something you can play and get new releases of and support. They're not going to be as recognizable if you're looking to know like which version of Vampire to play, but still worth noting that they're out there. They're still being made. Specifically, the God Machine Chronicle they made a few years back is just a really interesting read as far as like world building goes. So let's say you're trying to figure out between 20th edition or classic, updated classic, whatever, that version or 5th edition. Specifically, because it doesn't apply to Hunter, we'll talk about Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse. Right off the bat, I'm just going to say, if you're a new player with no emotional attachment to the old games, play the current edition. The mechanics are cleaner, the setting is more relevant to the modern times, and it's the edition that's currently being supported and created, and you'll be able to continuously play along with that and get new content with that. Now, if you're really interested in like all of the old lore and you've done some exploring into that, and you don't really mind playing something that's a bit outdated, a bit of a relic of its time, but still interests you and you kind of want that experience for whatever reason, that's perfectly valid and go for it. I played the old editions. I loved playing them. I'm sure you will too. And there's just, even though they're no longer currently being supported, there's so much content out there for it. I think there's literally like just under like 100 books of just stuff made for those old games. So if you're new and you want to dive into that, go wild. In a very broad sense, some of the main differences are there are mechanical changes. I do think the mechanics in 5th edition they're just better. They're more interesting to me. I like how they use the resources more. But it also implies a certain type of game that the old game didn't apply. The biggest difference I think if you're new and from like the intention of the game that you're going to notice is that 5th edition seems to be focused on stories of personal horror, things that are thematic storytelling, deep role play, focus on character arcs. The old games with all of the lore and options and whatnot, you're going to have a ton to work with, and it allows a little more like bigger scale stories with all sorts of powers and things at your disposal. It helps create a little more of a power fantasy type of game. And both editions can tell all of the same kinds of stories. That's just from a very basic like design standpoint. That's just kind of a little bit of the directions each one leans. So again, you can play 5th edition and have an action-oriented game. You can play Classic Edition and tell really deep personal stories. The tools are there for all of it. Again, this is just kind of what the mechanics, in my opinion, lend themselves to. And even mechanically, they both use the storyteller system. It's very similar. If you know how to play one, you'll pretty much know how to play the other. There's just a few differences. And like I said, mostly how they handle sort of the resource of the game. Where in 5th edition, your resource, the thing that fuels you, is kind of an unpredictable thing. Your hunger, your rage, your desperation. It's unpredictable. It's almost always in play mechanically, and it can allow you to do all sorts of amazing things, but can also lead to some unintentional consequences. The old World of Darkness mechanics with that, they treat blood and rage more like a mana pool or a resource to manage, to use your powers and do all your cool things. Now, if you're a new player and you've looked around and maybe even asked around certain spaces about which edition you can play, the people with the strongest opinions, at least that I have seen, tend to be, there are people who prefer the old mechanics. Perfectly valid. Go wild with that. The biggest reaction I've seen is from people who prefer the old lore. And that's what I'll get into a little bit. So both share the same foundational lore. 5th edition updates the lore. Doesn't supersede or do a lot. I guess some changes are bigger than others, but more or less in the games that have come out so far, they've just, again, updated the lore to the modern era. When I say modern era, these first books came out over 30 years ago. So that's 1991 is when Vampire the Masquerade was released. That's a long time. So the idea that they would change their lore and that 30 years, at least to me, makes sense. The World of Darkness games have always been flavored with left-leaning politics, and they've always been intended, besides a few unique sort of setting options, to take place in the modern times. So 5th edition reflects that. It reflects left-leaning politics in the modern times. Again, 30 years have passed. The political landscape now is not the same it was 30 years ago. You can feel that in the books. And I think you can see where I'm going with this. That makes some people, it hurts their feelings, I guess, or makes them upset. And it's not like 5th edition added a bunch of like political things that are controversial or seem to be getting people upset. In my experience, what people are most upset about is things that were omitted or changed. Most of what 5th edition did, which a fair critique of it is they didn't necessarily replace some of the things they removed. Though, again, a lot of it didn't need to be replaced. It's not like they took away how this one tribe operated or was culturally attached to. That means you need to replace it with something else. I don't really understand that logic. But hey, some people got really upset by it. In my opinion, a lot of the motivation for making lore changes was more designed to just omit or adjust things that have not aged well. And this is a similar thing you can see in like all media. Again, geek media is very much not an exception to it. We can use D&D as an example of, you can find all sorts of people who complain that Dungeons and Dragons is ruined. They've gone woke and this and that and whatnot. You know, there's the old school style and people really holding on to that, which is fine. So it's just kind of that same mindset that I'm sure you're familiar with if you're online at all, just being applied to an imaginary edition war. So if you're new, just be cognizant of the spaces that you're encountering the fandom or people with opinions on the editions. Wherever you are, there's going to be a bias there. Just understand the bias. Get opinions from multiple places and just be aware of what the intention is and make up your own mind. There's actual plays that you can easily watch of people playing both editions if you want to get a feel for it. There's free materials that you can get out there to just read yourself and make your own judgment call about it. Really just depends on what type of, what interests you about playing Vampire the Masquerade. As I said, there's a little bit of a different intention with each one. And then there's just like the practicality of playing the current modern edition too. Versus it's going to be a little more of a challenge to hunt down old material, especially if you want physical material. But again, it's not that much of an obstacle, and especially if you're fine with PDFs. Most of the PDFs are still out there. Just decide for yourself. If someone's very adamant about like, no, play this edition, figure out why they feel like that. And I have a sneaking suspicion of why some people feel a certain way, and I'll get into that. But me personally, if you're a new player, 5th edition, you're going to enjoy it. If you're interested in any of the themes or gameplay of any of the books out now, you're not going to be disappointed in 5th edition. If you're someone coming from the old editions and you're wondering if you should make the switch, that's, again, going to be a little more up to you, what you and your group's comfortable with, what sort of games you play, and if you need the updated rules and lore or not. And also you could, but I think some people do, I imagine, is use some of the new mechanics, which I think are pretty cool. And then you could just keep whatever lore you want. And if you're someone who knows you hate 5th edition, I'm not going to change your mind, and I don't want to. If you love your edition of the game, I loved that edition of the game. You could keep playing it. I actually have amazing news for you. No one's coming to take your books. Just maybe play the game, have fun, stop embarrassing yourself online, stop chasing outrage and online arguments, and play this edition you love. Stop searching for things for a game you don't play to comment on. And not even for me. Like I said, I really don't get much of that, which is crossing my fucking fingers it stays that way. Dude, leave some of these other people alone. It's annoying. Now, if you're someone who came here because you love your edition war and you've came to defend the old editions, or really, you don't have to defend them because no one's attacking them. You just really want people to know that 5th edition ruined World of Darkness, and you think it's for lore reasons or political reasons. I think that's strange for a lot of my own reasons. First of all, you can use whatever setting or lore that you want. If there's a thing that happened in a new edition where a clan is now part of this team, or to change the rules how this tribe used to work, or how whatever, it's you can make that not true for your game. You're allowed to use your imagination. You're allowed to be creative. If you feel so shackled by like the written world and world building and rules that you just can't function without them, you're not engaging in the game with a level of creativity that I'm interested in, frankly. I play 5th edition, and I change so many things in the lore. I pull so much from the old stuff that I really liked. I make up my own stuff entirely. I change things that are established in the new books. It's fine. It's not illegal. No one's yelled at me. And if they did, what a weirdo, right? Like, lore-wise, imagination-wise, setting-wise, hey, it's okay. You're allowed to do what you want to do. These books aren't hurting you that way. And again, you don't have to play them. I'm not convincing anyone to play it. It's just such a weird thing to get hung up on. And on that note, what did you do? Did you love every piece of lore in the old edition? All nearly 100 splat books of stuff? Like, all of it was just good to you? You loved it, you accepted it, and you immediately utilized it in your games? I'm imagining something had to have come up there like, I don't agree with that. Especially because these are all written by like different people. Some of this stuff contradicts earlier stuff. Some of it goes in way different directions than previously established lore. Like, what did you do back then? Just keep doing that, essentially. And again, I played the old editions. I love the old editions. I also like this edition. My tastes have changed. If yours haven't, and you're proud that in 30 years your tastes have not adjusted even a little bit, then that's on you. And also think about how like you're like, oh, it's not the same game. Like, of course it's not. This game is designed, again, to be modern, and for a specific modern audience. If the original games that came out 30 years ago were designed to resonate with your parents, people 30 years older than you at that time, would you have been super into it? Would that have pulled you into the World of Darkness? If World of Darkness in 1991 was made for your parents, would you still have like fully embraced it? Probably not. That's essentially what you're asking them to do now is, hey, give us something that culturally is the same as what you did in 1991. What a wild ask, or even expectation. Some of it might just become, you might have to accept that like this is sort of like what the left in like an American broad political spectrum is. It isn't really like the edgy and whatnot that like left was in 91. And if that upsets you for any way, that's a bigger issue than like what World of Darkness can do with it. And for the people who claim that like World of Darkness is woke now, it's wild to me to think that like, are you the same like punks and goths that played in the 90s that now use like woke unironically as like to complain about media? Are the punks and the goths really now spending so much time online, like obsessively searching for mentions of an edition of a game they don't play just to like get their hurt feelings out in the world and let everyone else know? Like, what happened? And if you're like, not to offend anyone, but like if you're working like, you're a dad who works IT and you wear like cargo shorts and like a silly nerd shirt or one with a pun on it that you think's clever, like who are you yelling at that like they lost the idea of what like real like rebellion was? Like, come on, get a little self-awareness. And if you are so offended by this, like you gotta look, like examine your convictions, figure out why they're so fragile. And if you think the new books sort of like lost the edge that the old books have, I agree with you, actually. But again, politically speaking, these books have always been through the left-leaning spectrum. That's the edginess just isn't the language of the left anymore. It's more of empathy and adaptability. The whole idea of like being offensive for the sake of offending and whatnot, like the other side sort of adopted those tactics, and it just might be a thing where like your tastes aren't aligned with the politics anymore, or maybe your politics have shifted, and then again, figure it out. If that happened, you just have to come to terms with like you're not the World of Darkness target audience anymore, as much as that might hurt your feelings. Like they started as, again, I use left very vaguely, but leaning American politically left and also modern. So again, these books are a bit of a snapshot of that. All right, they don't have the bite that the old ones did, and I get why that is a little disappointing. Where before the writing did have like a very distinct voice, and like you could tell, again, it was very much a product of its times, and I get the nostalgia for that. But that's not going to have the same effect anymore. That style of communication is just sort of, people are going to roll their eyes at it rather than be inspired by it. And again, if you don't like anything about this edition, like that's totally valid. Just stop talking about it. It's been years now. It's been years. How are you not tired of going online, seeking things out for something that you don't play or engage with anymore, just to complain? It's sad. It's sad. There's a lot of games I don't play, and guess what I don't do? I don't go looking for their forums or for channels that deal with their content, or especially don't go like harass the workers making that game just because I'm mad that it's not like the one I used to play. Even Shadowrun. If I can leave Shadowrun alone, after what they've done with the new edition, you can chill out. You can. I play my old Shadowrun. You're allowed to play your old World of Darkness. And also, it's been years. They're not going to stop making the games. They're not going to make radical changes because some of you are complaining about it. Because guess what? This didn't happen overnight. You realize that like a stranger didn't come in and force them to do this. They were making your version of the game with your lore and all the things you loved. And they were making money off it. I know the 20th edition anniversaries were doing well and whatnot. But again, it came to that because you all stopped supporting the product in a way that was sustainable. If all of these additions and updates and lore things were, or all the classic ones were still wildly popular, they're a business, they would have never changed it. Like at the end of the day, they're not going to just change their formula just because. They've changed it and updated it and are targeting a new audience because the old audience did not do enough to keep the company going in that way. And like, it's not your fault. Like, why would you? Again, every TTRPG, every video game, every media is constantly having to just refresh, change things to appeal to new audiences to bring in so they can keep making things. It's just, if you don't get that by now, I don't know what else to tell you. Like Dungeons and Dragons, they're from a business standpoint, I don't think you could say they made a mistake going woke, as some people think they did. They didn't. They're massively popular, more popular than they've ever been, and they're reaching a wider audience than they've ever been. They're in the cultural zeitgeist in a way that TTRPGs have never been before since they've been created. And they didn't get that way by sticking to first edition lore and rules and refusing to adapt. So it makes sense World of Darkness wouldn't do the same either. And if any of this is making you angry, that's sad for you. And also, like, look into outrage addiction. Look into why you're doing this to yourself. If you know you hate this edition, what are you doing? No one's making you play it. I promise. You've not changed anyone's mind. And again, I'm speaking from, like, I'm lucky. I really don't get a lot of that. Like, people who stumble upon my stuff seem pretty chill and just like here to learn about stuff and watch some of the stuff I make. It's every time I stray and like watch other channels or try to look at updates and things like that, it's just like the same type of reaction, and it's boring. It is, and it's not the majority. It's just I feel bad for like new players who want to dive in, that like you can't avoid it necessarily right now. And I think, I mean, not that you have to avoid it. Look at all your dissenting opinions. That's fine. But just like people who are actually like excited to play 5th edition and are new to this, I would love for them to have places to go to be allowed to do that and talk about that without some weirdo coming in and scoffing at them. All of that to say, if they mess up 5th edition of Mage, I will be there with you in the trenches. Cargo shorts, cinched, ready to go to war, because I love that game. It's my favorite game. But also, I do think it is the most ripe to be made into a 5th edition. Mechanically, it's going to be rough, but like the risk with the resources, it's already part of Mage before, and I think is really going to play well in the 5th edition. So I don't know. I could be looking back at this video if they ever make Mage and being like, nope, I'm a hater now too. I might be spending all of my time commenting and harassing community managers because they work for a company who ruined Mage. So maybe I'll get it. I don't know. Actually, just let me in there. Let me help make Mage, and it'll be good. Okay, I'm done with this rant. It wasn't meant to be a rant. It was meant to be me helping you pick an edition, but it's stuff that's like I've just been thinking about. I wanted to talk about, so there it is. I would love to talk about other things, so leave questions. Tell me topics you want me to cover, or just things you want lessons about, or just whatever. I'd like to start mining from the community to respond to in other videos. So the more you give me, the more I have to work with, and I think it'll be really cool. So in summary, the lesson you should learn from this is, if you're new, give the new edition a chance for sure. Get in there. If you're a fan of the old editions and not sure if you should make the leap to the new edition, check out some of their free materials and just like read some of the changes for yourself. If you like the mechanics, play the new edition. If you don't like the lore, make the lore changes. If you hate the mechanics and hate the lore, that's a bummer, but you can still play your edition. Just, again, you don't have to yell about it. And that's it for this lesson. Look forward to seeing what we want to learn about next time. And please don't don't listen to people who make their entire brand just like hating a line of games that they don't actually really have much experience playing, because their immense ego led to like an early end to every Chronicle they've attempted to play, online and offline, because I've talked to people who were in these games, and I get that like maybe they establish themselves as someone with like a fun voice who reports just on other people's writing and helps you learn about just a lot of the stuff. That's cool. But like when they start spiraling because they run out of material to cover and they're so obsessed with just being famous online, and they start lashing out because they did try to do some like actual playing of the games, but people didn't support that the same way. But it's not their fault. It's not can't be their skills. It's they yell at their own audience for not supporting them for it, and also decide the whole industry and the whole actual play space is ruined. It's even though they have no experience and they don't know what they're fucking talking about. And now, but then because they complain so much, they weirdly now attracted like a lot of engagement from just like other, just like outrage seeking bellyachers. And now they just kind of complained endlessly, instead of show just like a semblance of creativity, after they rage quit their attempts to actually tell stories. And it's, yeah, maybe instead of watching someone who just throws tantrums about something that like all you have to say is like, hey, I read the new stuff, I don't like it, instead of just like farming outrage for engagement because you have a weird ego and obsession with fame. Don't get your information from, if a place like that exists, don't find yourself elsewhere. There's a lot of other really good channels where you can find lore at. Not this one, but others.